master your smile. I remember a golfer in the Montana Special Olympics who you took to Florida.
John Espinoza.
John Espinoza.
What a great story.
Yeah.
It was several years ago. My friend Randy Geringa worked at CarQuest. CarQuest allowed their employees to take time off to volunteer Special Olympics. Randy's job at Par 3 in Billings was to take 3 golfers around the front 9, keep track of their score, find their lost golf balls. Once they got to 10 on a hole, that was the max.
Okay.
First hole's about 180 yards at Par 3. All 3 of Randy's golfers, they got 10s. But he tells me a great story. He said the golfer in the group behind him, Special Olympic golfer, teed off and hit the green. 180-yard hole. Well, Randy just shook his head. He thought, well, this has got to be luck. They walk off the second green. The golfer hit the green again. Well, that golfer won 2 Special Olympic gold medals that day.
This is a Montana boy.
Right, so Randy had to meet him. Found out his name was John. John lived in Eureka. And Randy said, and he worked at CarQuest, he traveled the state, and he said, John, there's no golf course in Eureka. Do you play in Kalispell? He said, no, I play in Eureka. You know, John's got Down syndrome, and Randy said, well, John, what's the name of your golf course? And John said, it's called John's Golf Course. His dad, Steve, a disabled Vietnam veteran, had built his son a 10-hole private golf course. Family has no money. So I do this sports story on the family.
Wow.
And I have John, the last 15 seconds of the program, inviting people to come play his golf course and telling them he'll be there all the time. He'll wait for you. The family's made 5,000 to 6,000 copies of this program.
Wow.
And they sent it all over the nation to raise money for their golf course. And the CD ended up in ESPN, Sports Center, had it on, People Magazine, Sports Illustrated, Good Morning America, HBO. Today, they're doing a movie on Hallmark TV called John's Gift on John's golf course.
Wow.
And a few years ago, Steve, the dad, was so excited. He called me up and said, Rocky, I've been asked to speak at the golf course superintendent's meeting. They're going to fly you down there to introduce me. Jack Nicklaus was the next speaker. And one of the last things I said, introduced Steve, I said, it's not every day you meet a man who built a golf course for his son. 17 years ago, I was announcing the Rapid City Central Billings Central game, but the broadcast only goes back to Rapid City, so nobody in Billings could hear what I say. And first game of the season, football rosters are never, ever, ever right. And I'm all by myself in the booth, and first tackle of the game, I looked down for the Billings Central number 44, there wasn't any. But he quickly became my 6-month-old son, Corey Erickson, had 16 tackles in that game. An amazing performance. But you can do that on radio.
There's usually someone sitting in the booth with you, though.
A lot of times, my good friend Bill Woolston.
Yeah.
Bill Woolston's my dear, dear friend, World War II hero. Played college football and basketball.
Wow.
At Rocky Mountain College. He played football when they only had 2 footballs. And the whole school, that's all they had. And I asked him, I said, Bill, what'd you wear for equipment? I interviewed him once, great interview. He says, well, we weren't, we weren't like hockey players that wore the mask. He said, I could fold my helmet up and put it in my back pocket.
Wow.
And he said for extra padding, they would use newspapers and cardboard. But the best story Bill tells me, the very best story, he said he never played a lot in basketball. And he said first half of a basketball game one year, remember this is 1938, and he said he was making eyes at a cutie across the way, and he said at halftime he didn't go in the locker room, he went out to the parking lot and sat with the young lady, and he said the second half started, and the coach said, now Bill, remember what we talked about at halftime? Now you go in and get that done. Problem is, Bill wasn't in the locker room at halftime. And things didn't go well for Bill in that second half.
Good deal.
Every time he's not at the game, I always say his name. 1939, there was a rancher that came in to listen to the 3rd game of the World Series.
In 1939?
In 1939 on the radio, before TV. And there were 5 or 6 people in the bar, and he sat on the end, and the Yankees were playing. I believe it was the Reds, and the game ended. The announcer said a new World Series record had just been set, as so-and-so pitcher had just pitched a 2-hitter. Wow. And at that time, the Montana rancher said, no, that's not true. I was a 1-hitter pitched in 06. And the bartender looked at him and shook his head and said, how would you know? Were you there? The rancher said, was I there? I was the pitcher. And that Townsend rancher, who was 65 years old at the time, had pitched 16 years in Major League Baseball.
My goodness. I don't think I ever sit with you, but what somewhere along the line you say, if I could just handle the stress at work, have the right thing to say to my kids, and be half as good as my perfect wife, life would be good. That really describes Rocky Erickson. But you've spoken to more high school graduations and sports banquets than anyone in captivity. So
It's doubtful.
What's the last thing that you say to a high school graduation?
I talk about the importance of setting goals, having dreams, and never giving up on your dream. And then I read them a letter that I got on May 17th, 1978, that I saved from Brown Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is the top broadcasting school in the nation, because I was going to be a sportscaster. I only had one goal, only had one dream.
Yeah.
That was it. So I was going to go to broadcasting school and go work in radio.
Be a successful broadcaster.
I applied to Brown. Got a great letter. And the admissions office told me that I did not have a future in radio, and it would be best on my part to look for another occupation because broadcasting would be a complete failure for me. So I tell the young people, I never gave up on my dream. Don't give up on yours.
You've announced a lot of games, thousands, maybe 10,000s. The last thing that you say to your audience at the end of every ball game, Rocky?
I give the final score, and then I say to my perfect wife, Christy, I'm on my way home.